Hello, Inform Scotland followers and friends and others, if there's any of you lurking. I love you too. I've just updated the data for the up to the 3rd of November. I know that today's the 4th and they were uploaded by the government on at 2 o'clock. But I started this blog last night and I didn't quite finish it, so I've just put up the data up to the 3rd on here. I'm also about to put up the Scottish deaths update because those data were updated by National Records for Scotland, and I'm afraid there's not really any good news there, although that's pretty much what I thought, that deaths would be, the excess deaths have gone flat, but we're still at an excess of 25%, which is horrifying. Before I start on the update, which I would suggest, if you don't want to be completely bored to tears by this video, you could go and read through the blog as I talk through the graphs. I just wanted to send out a wee message. There is a whole load of people at Inform Scotland who are supporting me, and we're all supporting each other and going through emails and things and keeping me on track, because I can be a bit disorganised on the emails front. Please do, if we're not getting back in touch with you, a really good way to contact me so that I don't have to sift through millions of emails, although I have people doing that for me now, which is a massive help, but I still have to actually go into the email inbox. But if you really want to get in touch, DM on Twitter or send a comment in on the actual website, because I see them straight away and they're much easier for me to reply to. We have had recently so many messages of support, and there's been a real shift recently. There's been a lot more of that, and it just makes me so happy. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for the messages of support. You really can't imagine what it means. I find it can be quite hard to keep going at times with this stuff. I am going to keep going, and there's no question of anything else happening, but you know, it can be really overwhelming. It's been a long haul now, with apparently sometimes very little progress being made. However, I think progress is being made. I'm noticing a change in the atmosphere. I think there's a souring in the atmosphere to a certain extent, which I don't like to see at all. It doesn't make me happy, but to an extent it has to happen, because some terrible things have been done to people, and we as a society there has to be a reckoning for that, I'm afraid. Sometimes irritation can be a powerful driver of change, but on the other hand, I've noticed a lot less irritation being directed at us, and I think that's because we are speaking the truth, and the truth eventually punches through, because it has to, because there's only one truth. And a lot of the time, we as a society, I think, are confusing opinion with truth. And there is only one truth, and there are many opinions, and people can have different opinions based on the same truth. But the fact is, or the facts are what they are. I can't really say what they are on this platform, but you all know what I'm saying. Graph 1 on this blog shows the 6th wave, I'm calling it, of coronavirus. It's actually fairly flat in appearance when you look at cases, but if you scroll down to graph 2, you can see that there has been a distinct 6th wave in positivity, and we are remaining at a level which is very close to what we saw in January, at the peak of the January epidemic, which was post-vaccine rollout. Newly tested individuals have gone back down to a pretty similar level to what they were at this time last year, which is good. More newly tested individuals indicates that more people are coming forward for tests who seem to have symptoms. They're not like the regularly tested people. Those are people who are actually sick And I think that's starting to settle down now, which is quite a good sign. Delayed discharges are 50% higher than they were this time last year. We're at 1,500 instead of 1,000. This is not good, I don't think, as we head into winter. It indicates that there's a trouble getting people out of hospital at the other end, and what that does is it blocks up the hospital all the way through right to ambulance arrivals. Hospital occupancy is basically flat, and deaths are falling very, very slowly. Graph 5 shows that hospital occupancy and deaths are quite closely linked, and they're predictable, and there's a steady ratio. But there's something weird going on with positive tests and ITU occupancy, which is like a measure of severe illness. I think, I've said it before, I said it last autumn and it was true then, but I really think the testing has just gone totally bananas, and we're doing far too much testing now. There's no clinical benefit for it whatsoever because it's not predicting anything. Hospital occupancy, I'm afraid we've gone through the milestone which we were clearly going to go through. Last year in 2020, we had 203,033 hospital occupancy days. And in 2021, we have 204,838. So that's like nearly 2,000 more hospital days. You can see on that graph that the January wave was worse than the April-May wave, but that might be because, the April-May wave in 2020, that might be because we weren't taking people to the hospital in the first wave. We were keeping them in care homes, but then we started taking them to the hospital. Anyway, there's been more hospital occupancy in 2020. Also for deaths, we had 4,578 deaths with COVID in 2020, and in 2021 we've had 4,631. Deaths are falling slowly, kind of in parallel with how they did after the autumn wave last year. I don't know what to make of that. They may be falling slightly slower than that. Graph 8 shows the positivity. So the positivity is still highly variable day to day, which I really do feel can only be an indication of something going on in the lab. So Tuesday was the highest day, and Wednesday was, much lower in positivity. So Tuesday was like 13%, and Wednesday, my mind's gone completely blank about the math. It's gone about 6.5%. So we're talking about half, almost, sort of half, a bit more than half the positivity that we saw on Tuesday. That's one day to the next. Great testing. Graph 9, you can see how much testing we're doing now compared to last year. Again, it's just enormous in the community. There is no value in this whatsoever. I don't know what we're doing. Graph 10 is a bit more sort of nuanced, but what we've seen in previous waves, up until this summer, we saw peaks in positives reported, which actually didn't have much to do with tests conducted. And I still maintain that because we weren't correcting for false positives, the testing was all a bit of a mess up until then. But what we're seeing now is that the peaks in positive test numbers have coincided with peaks in tests conducted. But even in August and September, as the number of tests conducted came down, the number of positives came down even quicker. But what's happened with this latest wave is that even as tests conducted have gone down, the number of positives reported has gone up, and that's because the positivity has increased. But it's quite striking when you see it there that it's almost like the number of positives reported won't come down. Now, that is it's not just that more people are showing up for testing, because the number of tests conducted has gone down. So what that is either an indication of a systematic problem in the labs, or it's an indication that we have more virus around now than we had before. I don't know which of those options you prefer, but to me, either way, it's not great. Graph 11 shows the same thing, even as the number of community lab tests has gone down this time. The number of the positive percentage of tests has remained elevated. That's with like 90% or whatever it is of the population of Scotland vaccinated. IT occupancy is still, like, there's still stuff going on in the hospitals, not as much in some places, but just as much in others as at previous times. And hospital occupancy is similar. There's some places that are having just as bad a time as they were in January and April 2020. I think that that's just because the numbers of patients are small in the smaller hospitals, and it's just noise. You're always going to have some COVID patients in hospital now, presumably. Vaccinations graphs are the last ones that I've shown, and you can just see that first doses and second doses are limping along. We've got more second doses being conducted now daily than first doses, quite consistently, and that indicates that very soon the number of second doses will start to decline as well, and I think we're going to peter out. We've still not got any data, as far as I know, on boosters. So the deaths update will be going up shortly on the website. Maybe it'll be tomorrow now. And I just want to put a wee note on the end of this video that you see a lot, and we have it on both sides of the argument with the COVID stuff. You see a lot of kind of complicated data analysis and things going on with COVID statistics. And one of the compliments that I keep getting, which I do appreciate, but I almost find it hard to accept the compliment, is that the people say it's great data analysis. I'm not analysing data here. I'm just plotting them on a graph. And I now have very extensive spreadsheets which allow me to produce these graphs with lots and lots of data on them, and they tell a story. But I'm not really doing any analysis. And one of the things that I caution against is paying too much attention to analysis. So you see lots of analysis, I have to be careful about what I say here. You see lots of analysis about a certain very popular, very protected, speech-wise measure that we're taking against this coronavirus. And you hear that it reduces severity of disease. And you can hone in on a sort of individual benefit if you want, or you can look at it more at a population level. But if you go back in time to October 2020, we were being told that, the measure that we were going to take, which was going to protect everyone and be wonderful, was the way out of the pandemic, and that was going to reduce hospitalizations. And of course, what people heard when they heard that was, oh good, so our hospitals won't be full with those patients anymore. But that isn't what has happened. And even though we had a lot of problems in 2020 when the virus first arrived, we still have as much of a problem by any measure now, after the vast majority of the population has been given this treatment. And I would just like to add, you all know, I think you know what I'm saying, but what I'm meaning is, don't get kind of bogged down with very complex analysis, because it's not necessary. It's quite a simple question. Has the situation improved? And these data show it hasn't. And I would like to just say something else. I was talking to my daughters this morning about things, and we were talking about vaccines. And I was saying about how vaccines, safe and effective vaccines, are an absolute miracle. What an amazing invention, and what a triumph of human ingenuity if they can produce vaccines which work and are safe, and they prevent you having to have a virus. And I was saying to my children, nobody's against that. Everybody's for vaccines that mean that you don't have to go through all the horror of having an illness. You just have to get the vaccine, and then you don't have to have the illness, and then you won't, that's the problem solved. But of course, that only makes sense if I'm just trying, this is really for YouTube's benefit. It only makes sense to have a vaccine because, of course, no vaccines ever cause any damage, and they always prevent infections happening. So then getting vaccinated makes a whole lot of sense, and they're just a miracle of human ingenuity, and I'm all for that. But if they didn't work effectively, and there was a risk of you getting sick from having a vaccine, which of course has never ever happened in the history of the world, but if it were to happen, then that would mean that you would have to ask questions about that vaccine. So that's what I was talking to my children about over breakfast, and I think it's like a study in reason, what I've just said. Thank you once again for your messages of support and encouragement. That is why I love you people, and I really do. I'm not going anywhere except possibly to somewhere else online, but I'm sticking around. Stay sane, stay strong, stay tuned, and remember, I love you.